you are on the Block Party. I'm your host, Joyce Conroy, and this is Ernie's Corner. Alice Cooper, as we all know over the years, and I don't think Alice is going to slow down any. He
No.
is such an animated and vivid performer. The Madhouse, Ernie, when it comes to Madhouse, Alice is just perfect. And there was a
Oh yeah.
Madhouse rock tour.
Yeah, it was the perfect follow-up to From the Inside, which was, he's battling his demons. I mean, we all have demons, but he's really, when you're battling your demons and you're just in a tight community of people that know, when you're a celebrity like Alice, everybody knows. So, I mean, on top of, dealing with, all that, he had to deal with his personal demons as well. And, we were very close with Alice and Shep and the rest of the guys in the band, and still have relationships with them, which is really great. And Alice was, sharing. I mean, he was pretty addicted to a lot of different things. And as he was talking about this tour that he was doing, which is, by the way, we're going to have a hard time later in the show figuring out which songs we want to hear, because every song on this album is a winner.
I know, I
Yeah.
know.
And so we'll talk about that back then. But right now, when we were talking about the concept of this tour, and we were called in to do the backstage passes and the advertising for the tour, and what we would, what would we go about doing? And right away, Madhouse Rock, it's got the lettering I did is, exactly looked like I was mad when I did it. And it was kind of like the Alice Cooper logo that I did with the dripping things and the eyes and the O's and stuff. I mean, I got pretty good at this. And when I would do this lettering, each one of those letters was individually picked. I would do a half a dozen M's and then pick the one I wanted and cut it out and on big pieces of paper. And then I do an A and a D. And sometimes I do an A and a D and they'd look good together. So I kind of, because it had to have that space to get like that. You can't just sit there and do it like I would do the Bee Gees logo, where every line had to be exactly the same thickness. So this was kind of done in a madhouse, kind of insane way of how I would normally do lettering, which would be really tight. This was very loose. And so it was very hard for me to do it like this. And that's when I got, into like just doing it really big and cutting them out and putting them together. And then, getting them to a size where I could scan that and that way, and then go in and work on it a little bit. But so there's an interesting story behind that. But the even more interesting story is how we landed on this look and feel for Alice and the demons that he was fighting at the time. And I talk about it all the time, how, we as creatives, you're always influenced by everything that's around you and everything that's in your realm of what you're doing, the love of what you're doing. And we were very much into illustrators at this juncture in our career at Pacific Pioneer, and the artists that we were on staff and that we were being exposed to. Muka was one that was very, very popular with us. We talked about, influences that we had from an art standpoint, along with Norman Rockwell and J.C. Leyendecker and stuff. When we were in this, you got to remember, this is like 1979. And so we had been in business for like 7 years. And we were really starting to make a real big name for ourselves and doing a lot of Alice stuff. And Muka was a really influential painter that influenced not only us at Pacific Pioneer, but backing up to the 60s when I was coming up in the Summer of Love and all that. These posters became really the kind of graphics that all the different groups were using for covers and tour posters and stuff. Muka was a big influence. There was also another couple of less known illustrators that were from that same time period. And the first one that came to mind was Beardsley. And I don't know whether you're familiar with him or the audience is, but you can definitely look him up. He was an incredible designer and illustrator, and you're familiar with his work. Just beautiful. And again, same time as Hindra Clay, who we're going to be talking about, and Mucha. These are all turn of the century artists and illustrators. Um, uh, Here's Beardsley was even more of a designer, a graphic designer and an illustrator. And you sort of see that in the amount of space that he leaves for the importance of what, the dark areas that really punch the light areas that you want to keep your focus on. So he was very, very influential in Pacific Pioneer and what we were doing. And then the one that really influenced me when we were looking for the concept for this tour graphic was a guy named Hindra Clay. And I don't know whether you know who he is or your audience does.
We are learning. We are
Yeah,
learning.
this guy was incredible. This guy combined animation and action with his sketches and what you see here and his fantasy. So it was perfect for Alice. It was perfect for this, Madhouse rock tour. This guy was insane. And a lot of people don't know who he was. He wasn't as famous as Mucha or Beardsley, but his later on, and you'll see, we'll talk about that in a second, about how he influenced another generation of illustrators. And I'll get to that one very, very famous one, and very, very famous in heavy metal. Okay. So this kind of fantasy, this kind of action, really, I mean, his stuff, and it wasn't always just black and white sketches. He did beautiful, but it was always kind of weird, creatures dancing, elephants dancing with alligators and stuff like that. I mean, it was really, but always moving, and even his still stuff was moving. And then I talked about a current, well, not so current, but just recent illustrator that was very, very influential in heavy metal, Frank Frazetta. And this was a Frazetta sketch that he did. He was really influenced by Clay. So, it was when it came to doing this album, my mind went right to this. And I had a huge collection. I probably had 300 books. And the art department would spend hours. There was no internet, so we didn't have the ability to go to Google and Google in, Hindra Clay or, fantasy illustrators or anything like that. You had to go to a library or go to wherever you could find it, magazines. I had magazines and books. And we're going to talk about, there's going to be a couple of more of these down the road where we're going to talk about other things that influenced us for the way we did the album cover. And this was not an album cover, but it became very, very known because of the backstage passes and all the posters that for the concert and stuff. So based on this concept of Hindra Clay and Beardsley as well, to a degree of where you want the importance to be in the composition and the messaging you're trying to do, we showed a sketch to Alice and Shep. They loved it, and we set up a photo shoot. And this is the photo shoot that we did with Alice.
I love it. This is great.
Yeah,
By
and
the way, yeah, we're going to I would have let our family know that what Ernie and I are speaking about, we have a video that goes along with this, and you'll get to see that crazy look on Alice's face in a straitjacket.
Yeah, yeah, we went up to his house and we put him in the straitjacket. And Alice was great to work with because not only was there a lot of subject matter, snakes and guillotines and hanging and electrifying and all these things, he was really if he liked it, he gave 110%. He never questioned what we wanted him to do. He really, if he had great insight, probably, and I think that's probably why his career got bigger and is still huge, bigger than all of them, even though together they were better than any of them individually are today with hits and stuff like that. But, I think that not every musician bases success on hits. It's what they get personally. And Alice is a hard worker, always was, always into opening his mind to what you're presenting. So when we came up with this idea, showed him some Hindra Clay pieces that I shared with you, the craziness and the action, the tension that there, you got to really look this guy up because he's got, alligators dancing with hippopotamuses, and I mean just this, and everything is moving. Everything is like constantly moving. It's like why I like John Pichet's version of the Rolling Stones song more than mine, because it reflects the movement of Mick Jagger. It's not only his lips, it's his action. John Pichet's illustration is a gesture drawing like these are. This is a gesture drawing. What I did was a graphic, tight, stylized kind of graphic that really sort of had the lips and tongue, but it didn't have the action. And this is a perfect example of what I'm talking about. Hindra Clay, you got to look him up, man. The guy's amazing. So we went and we showed him some clay drawings and explained what we wanted to do with incorporating the straitjacket, which has become his wardrobe, and the demons. And it was, I mean, when we showed him the Hindra Clay, one thing to show him, tell him the idea, then show him a sketch, and then you see Hindra Clay, his work, and they were 100% behind it. So these are the photographs. This was, we did about 6 or 7 photographs, and that's me in the background holding his hair up. And if you look at this one, you can see me better. And I had broken my little finger. And so my hand is in a cast over here, but I'm holding up his hair and stuff. And Bill's taking the shot. And this is where we ended up landing. So we created all the little demons the same way Clegg had the action in these. We created the little demons that were the alcohol, the drugs, the torment, the pressure, all those things pulling and tugging at him. And I'll send you this as always, and you can blow it up so they can see the little characters even
This
better.
is a revelation, Ernie. I went before our segment, I went onto YouTube, and there was a piece with Alice on that tour. And as part of the act, I think Cheryl, his wife, was one of the dancers.
Yeah.
They were coming out and they were dressed as alcohol.
Yeah.
And now you're putting this together, with Heinrich Clegg, and now I can see where the inspiration comes.
I
Thank
do
you.
what you do. You inspire me. I do what you do. I'm connecting the dots for you, just like you connect the dots for me and our neighbors here on the block. That's one of the great things about the block. It's really fun. It's great to understand even better what your ideas are about the music that we all love. And I'm able to show it graphically. You're able to talk about it and connect the dots. So I'm very pleased when I'm able to hear from you that I connected a dot or two for
You
you.
did even more so on this one. Amazing.
Yeah. And this is, so we did this illustration. I did the lettering, and like I talked about, the way I had put the different letters together, I had the words separate as well. So when it came time because what you're seeing here, the usage of the lettering, we used it 2 or 3 different ways. And so if I put it together as one piece in this configuration, then we got to do a whole thing for that one. I was able to just mix them around. And okay, now we've got this format, we've got that format. We have one where it's all 3 words in a row, depending on what had to go on the piece. In this case, it's all the different stars that are in the show and stuff like that. So we did all these ads. We would do the ads for the different publications and the magazines and newspapers. Local newspapers were a lot. I really enjoyed working with Alive. And again, we talked about it, done 13 albums, but I've done a lot of these kind of things too, where it's backstage passes or it's ads for the different tours and the different cities and stuff like that. They use us a lot for that kind of stuff. And then, as all things do, the music industry sort of shrank up for us, and also for the artists, the musicians and stuff. So thank God for casinos. The good, bad, or indifferent, they do give, great musicians, a chance to still perform their music. Burton is a perfect example of that. And Randy Bachman, and Alice. Alice tours with 3 different groups. That's amazing. And I don't think his album sales are what they used to be. Obviously, none of them really are, and not even the Rolling Stones. But they depend more on the merchandising and the marketing and the tours. The tours are where they make their money. And Alice is the same. He's always touring. If he's not touring, he's recording a new album. He's doing different things for kids, music and stuff. He's really promoting these centers where kids can go and get into music. I mean, he's really giving back. And I think that's the person. I've known Alice from 1971 to today, and I've been aware sometimes closer than others with what's going on with him, Shep, his life, the group, other guys in the group, and the different configurations of the group, Kane Roberts and some of these other guys that we talked about. And I think that, like a lot of us, when we're young, God is in our life. As we get older, we start to, I went through a period in the 60s of where you're your own God and you're this whole thing. So you kind of move away from, strict religions. And then later in life, you realize that you need to have God come back in your life. And when I got diagnosed with cancer 24 years ago, knock on wood, God came back into my life. And I accepted him. And I don't mean to turn this into a religious thing, but where I'm going with this is I think we all get to a point. Unfortunately, some of us are at the end of it all, and you say, "Oh God," and that's it. It's so much better to be able to have him on your side and in your life. And I don't mean I'm not a Bible thumper. I don't go to church. I'm, he's helped me, and the comfort of knowing that he's in my life is great. I think Alice is experiencing that now. He's giving back. He never gave back the way he's giving back now. And I think, and again, his father was a preacher. He had moved away from religion. It came back into his life. He doesn't, push away from it. He accepts it, and he doesn't try and nail those shoes on our feet. He just sets an example. Sometimes actions speak much louder than words. And I think Alice, I love the guy. We've had a great run. If I do another album, it would be great. If I don't, that's fine too. 13 is a lucky number with me and Alice. So, and I know, how you feel about religion and stuff. And I respect you a lot for that. I mean, a lot of people don't want to let that be known or whatever you want to call it. But it's comforting. And that's what sometimes we need in our lives, a place to go and be comfortable. I'm comfortable here on the block. It's growing. Our neighbors are growing. We're going to have to buy the next block or the one across the street because we're going to overflow here, but there's always room for more. And that's the other thing I love about you and my relationship with the block party is it's just a very comfortable place.
We just keep finding out all these wonderful things from you, and you're so open. I mean, this segment, I learned so much, what was behind this Madhouse Rock tour and the images. And the great thing, you were mentioned like the bands with Alice. Davy Johnstone was part of the group. I think they were the Ultra Latex band that they were
Yeah.
called at the time. Well, Davy is a big Elton John alumni. He's played with Sir Elton John, from the very
Wow.
early days.
Yeah, it's amazing how, I mean, I'm certainly not in the music scene the way I was then, but it was so great to be part of that. It was so great to be part of it. And we've talked about this before. As long as people have ears and eyes, the contributions that we all have made, you, me, these musicians that we work for, musicians that we never did anything for, but just love their music, will be there forever. And that's comforting too, to know that you've made a mark. I mean, isn't that what we all want to do? We all want to be able to say Kilroy was here. We were here. I want to be more than just a headstone in a graveyard somewhere or ashes in an urn or thrown out over the ocean. I want to leave something behind. And I'm a firm believer in trying to, and I guess this is growing up in a strict Italian Catholic family and then going through the hippie movement and all the rest of it. I want to try and leave it better than I found it. And for me, that's all part of it too. And I think that by the images that I've been part of, I haven't created any I haven't created each and every one of these pieces, but there's thousands of them, but I co-authored them. This was, what you're looking at here was my idea and my option to choose which illustrator of the five that I was staff on would. This one was Bill Garland. He was an incredible, and he was learning. He never could draw like this before he joined Pacific Eye and Ear. And he learned how to do this with Drew, and I learned from them, and they learned from me. And so it was a family. And unfortunately, a couple of them have passed away now, Joe Garnett and Carl Ramsey. But Bill Garland's still out there, Kevin Spinney, Rick Lynch, just an amazing group of people that um, it was like it's never going to be the same. But for me, I always make the comparison of Pacific Eye and Ear and a rock band, and we were able to, Bill Garland and I stayed together the longest. And then there were guys like Bob Inglesiepen and other people that came along, but Bill Garland and I were always tight. And then about 6 or 7 years ago, we sort of disconnected. He moved. I don't know where he is. He's still got a website where his work is there. I mean, it's beautiful stuff. I mean, Bill was an incredible artist and calligraphy. He did all the calligraphy for the Spiritual Sky Incense and the Golden Avatar album that we talked about. Bill was an incredible calligrapher, and all the snaz cartoons for Rolling Stone magazine. So this is another one of those kind of things that it's not an album cover, but it represented an album cover. And now,
Uh-oh. Uh-oh.
you feel it coming?
I
Put
feel
your
it
hands on
coming.
the
I feel
screen,
it coming. My
and you
glasses are
can feel
coming
it
off.
coming. All right, here it comes. Here it comes.
Oh no.
As I mentioned early on, this album, this compilation of songs is every one of them is a hit. So, and Burton always accused me of picking the low-hanging fruit. So out of the three, again, one of my favorite songs of all time of Alice Cooper, Only Women Bleed. I think it was for him. It was showing the world, just like Bob Dylan did with Lay Lady Lay in Nashville Skyline, that he could sing. And it's a compassionate song, and it's really strong. Then comes along I'm 18, which is a low-hanging fruit. And then the other one that's kind of the oddball for me is How You Gonna See Me Now?
That's a great song. That
Well,
was
it's
so
him. It's
honest.
him. Yeah, it's him. It's him. And so those three would be my pick. What would you pick?
All righty, I'm going to go with From the Inside because I mean I saw that clip of him, on the
Yeah.
tour, and he was just so Alice and
Yeah.
singing that song. And I have to say, Welcome to My Nightmare. That's low hanging fruit, but when it comes to him and the way people used to view him in those early days, what's
Yeah.
going on with this guy? He's crazy.
Yeah. Well,
Welcome to My Nightmare is
the
great.
beautiful thing about his image, and this is something that we always try to portray, whether it was blatant or more subtle, was that he was the victim. He was always the victim. He'd get hung, he'd get electrocuted, he'd get, head cut off. And people relate to that. It's like being the underdog. There's always compassion for the underdog. There's always compassion for the victim, even if it's, well, I'm sure glad it wasn't me that got electrocuted. I mean, so they really knew how to play that. And it goes right along with, like you said, From the Inside. I've seen clips of the tour, but I know how he was when we did that album. And when he had to be in the quiet room, in the straitjacket, and that little door that you opened on the inside of the album, he was out there. He was out there. He could, and I think that's the thing that, because he's more than just makeup. I mean, how many artists tried to do just the makeup without the talent, without the rest of it? You got to connect the dots. Alice knew how to connect the dots and how to reach out to that audience. And again, I flash back to the first time I saw him live at the Palladium, and that heckler came up on the stage and he stabbed him. The guy fell over dead, and people are freaking out. And then at the end, he hangs himself, and there's no encore. and there's no internet to go to. It's like, holy crap. So you go to the radio station, and from people like yourself, they're saying, well, we just got a news flash that there was a Alice Cooper concert tonight. There was a mistake, and he actually hung himself. And people were going crazy because you couldn't go to public library. Where are you going to go? Cashbox, Billboard, and Record World, they don't come out to the end of the week, next week. So all you had to do was the disc jockey was the immediate person. And when you think back how that beautiful thing works, is look at Orson Welles in the War of the Worlds.
Yeah.
He was so convincing with that show. People were actually killing themselves and jumping out of bed. They thought the aliens were here and they were going to get them. The power, and Firesign Theater was a group that could, Monty Python was great, but they were more visual. Firesign Theater was audio, and they were theater for the mind. They really were. And Alice I compare him to those kinds of people that could project an image so strong that people will love him.
Theater for the mind and theater for the eyes is what Alice says. And Ernie, it's something because shock rock was actually around before him. Pardon me, with Screaming Lord Sutch over in Britain, and then of course
What
the
about
Screaming
Arthur
Jay
Brown?
Hawkins, Arthur Brown.
Screaming Jay Hawkins.
Alice took it to a whole new level. He just took it to a whole new level and exploded.
And then with the snake early on, I mean, I told you, I shared with you, I was at that meeting at Nestle with all these brand managers, and the one woman asked me, well, what have you done besides, what else you got? Album covers. So really, what album cover? Anybody I would know? And I think she's, Frank Sinatra or Perry Como. And I'm saying, well, yeah, the Rolling Stones. Oh, that demonic group that does blood worships and stuff to the devil. No. How about Alice Cooper? Oh, Alice Cooper, the guy that rips babies apart on stage. And so,
I know, it's crazy stuff.
The more, just like Elvis and black rock music from the 50s, the more parents told you no, the more you had to see it yourself, the more you wanted it. And that's another thing about what Alice did. I mean, there were people coming out, condemning him for, the wrong kind of projecting the wrong kind of image. And, just with the snake, and the Catholics were going crazy. I mean, this is a guy who worships the devil, and the devil is a snake. We all learned that. That's where the snakes got the bad rap.
They sure did.
You think of the devil and slimy. They're not either one.
It's theater. It's theater. My father, and I've shared this before, was an usher at the Baltimore Civic Center, and today is my late father's birthday. So this is a perfect conversation. Yeah. Daddy, I'm talking about you. My dad saw Alice, the early days of Alice at the Baltimore Civic Center. The next morning, he's talking to my mother. That guy was horrible. He had this boa constrictor, and his name was Alice. And I always remembered that. And then I fell in love with Alice's music. Sure. And my father still used to shake his head.
My mom, one of the best things that ever happened to her in her life, besides us kids and her husband and stuff, was meeting Alice.
Well,
Alice came over to the studio, and she was there, and they were like peas and carrots. And they had gotten together 3 or 4 times after that, either whether it was backstage at a concert when they were in LA or whatever. And they had a special place for each other. He really loved her, and she loved him, and she would brag to all her sisters and cousins and anybody that would listen to her that she knew Alice Cooper. And people were like, oh my God, is he really like they say? Is he really, so she became like a center of interest,
Oh, that is great, Ernie. Yeah, I'm so glad she had that experience.
And I have that picture of her and Alice together, at the office. It was just so wonderful. I mean, life is too short, and there's so much to absorb and learn. And, if we continue hating each other and doing the way it's doing, we're never going to learn anything. We just need to really start. That's why everybody that ever emails me or text or comments on Facebook or whatever, I always say I love them. I don't think there's enough of that. Whether you're a guy or a girl, I love you. You're just like me. We're humans, and we all have one thing in common with everything that's alive in this world, and that's to live.